Then, well, good morning, everyone. Sorry for this delay. I'm Teresa Vaijes, and I work for the Forest Ownership Center of Catalonia. It's a public body belonging to the Forestry Ministry of Catalonia, and we're going to show you the process we are undertaking in the co-design of a local fund for forest and water within the Horizon 2020 Sincere project. So we're going to talk about forest and water, and I guess when we talk about it, you come out with this positive idea of the positive role that forests have on water. If we had no forest, we had no water, no clouds, no rain. The water quality would be lower, floods, and so on. But from year 2000, there has been a shift in research interest towards the idea that more trees, or too many trees, if I can say that, can mean less water being exported from the ecosystem. This is the blue water, the so-called blue water. And this comes after the big plantations of fast-growing tree species that were taking place in Australia and South America. And indeed, research found this strong relationship, negative relationship between too many trees and the blue water that we humans can use. In the last 5 years, though, research has shifted again a little bit towards this, towards balancing this pendulum movement that took place at the beginning of the century, to remind us that we always have to look to the full hydrological cycle, and that we likely have both effects, the positive effects and the negative effects, and that they will depend highly on the location we are based on. If we want more information on that, this comes from a webinar that Professor Van Noordwijk gave last year at the Sincere project. So which is the location we are talking in here in this case study? We are based in Catalonia, which is in northeast Spain. And in Catalonia, what we've seen that the last century, the forest area has grown a lot due to rural abandonment. So we've got lots of what we call new forests, which look like these, are newly naturally regenerated forests that have colonized ancient pasture land or crops. There is, of course, we have a mature forest, and you're lucky because you will see them later in a later presentation. But we are talking here in this case study on these highly dense, young, non-managed forests. And a recent study has been able to link this increasing forest extension and forest biomass with reduced water quantity, water flow in our rivers. This also has impact in the vulnerability. This type of forest structure has also impact in the vulnerability of the forest towards the risks that we are facing: fire, wind, and pests, and so on, and other ecosystems related to it. Of course, climate change will make it better. So what we are doing is to advocate for multifunctional forest management with the main objective to regulate this tree biomass, to find this balance, this pendulum shift, so that we, while we are maintaining the positive effects of forest, we are not having the drawbacks that we have on water services. But this multifunctional forest management, which is only based on the provision of services and no products are produced, needs to be financed. And in a country where almost 80% of the forests are private, and the market it only exists for the products, so we needed to find, we wanted to explore new ways to find financing for multifunctional forest management. So after so many years of hearing of these payment for ecosystem services schemes, so we decided to try one, and we chose the newest water reservoir that was created in Catalonia, which is the Rialb reservoir, and the area limited by the 6 municipalities that were affected by its creation. So the first thing we did was to find who are the key stakeholders we have to work with. We will act as a forest ownership center as intermediary, but we needed to gather all the others. Here I use this graph that comes from this manual that was released 2 months ago from the PES, the cost PES 4W, and which might interest you. And then what we did is to to make a list of all the people from the forestry sector, water sector, tourists, and with different levels of impact and gender balance and so on, to create a multi-actor group. The idea was that this multi-actor group was going to meet 4 times during 4 years, once a year, to guide all the process of developing this potential payment for ecosystem service scheme. So each of the meetings has different objectives, starting November 2018 and finishing this very same week on Thursday. I'm going to show you now the 3 of the main results that we have achieved so far. The first one was to build consensus on this link between forestry and water. You have to bear in mind that in the first meeting, half of the people that were in the room have never thought or learned anything about the relation between forest and water. So we devoted lots of time to talk about it, their views, their perceptions. We did things like this, these drawings and so on, so to reach a consensus on this link. But we also had to realize that this acknowledgement of the link between forestry and water had to be also reflected into regulation or maybe a strategic planning. So at that time, the urbanistic master plan of the reservoir, of the water reservoir, was being produced. So we decided to use this instrument as an exercise for this, how could we increase this governance over the watershed of the reservoir. So we contacted the responsibles for producing this plan and some key stakeholders, and we provided them with lots of information on the services these forests in the area were providing and the positive impact that forestry may have on these services. So in the end, this plan was approved in 2020, and with one of its 7 strategic objectives was this one that you see here, that to integrate multifunctional forest management as a key element and as a provider of forest ecosystem services that should be promoted. There was also another recommendation to produce forest management plans at landscape level that include the identification and promotion of financing mechanisms to ensure the provision of forest ecosystem services. Then that was quite a success. The second work we've been doing is to find evidence, true evidence for that specific area on the potential impact of forestry on these water ecosystem services and landscape. So this is not easy because water, it requires time, but we've been using simulation models to do so. And here you can see on your left side, all these red dots are the plots, forestry plots where forest management could be implemented. And then in these plots, we simulated that all these plots were managed, how many additional cubic meters of water would be produced then. And then we came out with this figure of cubic hectometers. And we've been working also with other indicators and methodologies, and we have these other kind of figures, like if you manage 1 hectare of forest, of this kind of forest, you can have additional 1,500 to 2,400 cubic meters of water per hectare. We did the same with burn probability. So the probability of a fire, you see here, for instance, the darker blue areas are the ones that where probability would change after a forestry treatment, so to lower this probability of having a fire. This is well, something we did. And first and third, we worked on the design of the concrete payment for ecosystem service scheme. What we did was, in the first meeting, we did a brainstorming of the different ideas that stakeholders in the area thought it could be possible to implement as a payment for ecosystem services scheme. And out of all the ideas that came out, we chose to design a local forest fund managed by a forest owner organization. So in the second meeting, we talk about how this fund would look like, which structure would it have, who would pay, who benefits, who gets the money, and so on. And after this meeting, we contracted some external consultancies so to take all these ideas and put it in a way that was legally possible and adapted to the specific conditions of the area. So we came out with this governance structure of the fund. So the fund will be hosted by the Forest Owners Association that would have to be refunded to make it bigger, to include all the new forest owners that wants to join the pilot trial. And then there will be a local public consortium, the consortium that includes all the 6 municipalities affected by the reservoir, who would help the Forest Owners Association in all the economic audits and so on. And we, as a regional public administration, forestry administration, we will certify that the forestry treatments that are being applied comply with the regulations and provide the benefits that they claim to be provided. So this was the initial plan, but you see, reality doesn't care about plans. So in 2019, we had the elections of the mayor, and 4 mayors changed. So we had to, again, had all the commitments signed again. And so a lot of work had to be done in explaining again the project and so on. And then COVID came, so no meetings could be made. So what we did is to join the 3 and the 4 meetings in one, and that will take place next Thursday. Unfortunately, I cannot bring you the results yet. So what we have is now we have the governance structure. In Thursday, we will be talking about the beneficiaries and the financing and payment mechanism. We already have a list that we did in a previous meeting, and we will be working on it a little bit more. And then what we will do this year also is to try a first pilot test, even if this so even if we are not successful with finding finance in this year, we have had an agreement with another project, a live climate project, and we're going to have a pilot test of their market of climate credits, so that will bring seed money to start making this fund working. And I would just wanted to say as a last comment that even if we don't know how will it take us, if it will be successful or not, or I will explain it to you in later, in maybe next year. But the process we've been doing so far, it's been really fruitful. And just to give you an example, in the new watershed, in the new river basin management plan for the next 5 years for the Catalan rivers, one of the measures in the program of measures would be forest management, and this is because of the work we've been doing with the water responsibles in this process. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your very interesting presentations and for the insight you brought to this panel. As we discussed, we will move to the second presentation. So maybe Teresa, you will be available for answers at about
okay.
11 o'clock. Yes. So next, Mr. Zoltán Gájer will present the communication, community-supported afforestation.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I will share my screen. And actually, my presentation will go by our side. So we are MyForest in Hungary, and we made this project because of global warming, because of the loss of forests in the world, on Earth. So in the last 300 years, the 2/3 or the half of the forest has disappeared. And we think that this is one part of the problem. So there is carbon emission, and the thing what is capturing this is getting smaller and smaller, and that's why we have, I think, this global warming here. And our goal was to create forests with people who wants to do this. People could be citizens, civils, or businessmen or companies. So we made a platform for this reason. In the beginning, we measured how many trees could be on Earth, and with Google Maps and with some metrics, we came to this number that every person on Earth should plant 200 trees to get the half of the forest back. We believe that with forests, the global warming will be slower. Maybe we can change the direction of this move. So there is a team. We are volunteers, and we think about these problems for years. And the solution is, in our case, a platform where any kind of actors can meet each other and do what they want. So there are individuals who are worrying about climate change and wants to make forests, wants to plant tree, but has no opportunity to do this. In our platform, they meet with the landowner. The landowners has a land but is not used because of any reason. So there are many lands which is not used in our country, and the landowners have problems with those lands, so they can offer for us for forestation. There are the business side, companies, organizations who are tending toward this idea, who feels that their customers feel this problem, what we should solve somehow. So they feel that they have to join in this project because of their worrying, or because of the customers of them are worrying for this problem. And many other people could join this. So we are a platform. We are gathering money on concrete lands which are offered for us. You can see people and companies here who made these donations, and there are only 1 tree and there are 500 trees to be planted. So everyone is here. They can see each other. They can see the progress of one or the other land to be forested. So that's how we do it. And we have finished 3 projects, or not finished, but the first forestation is done. Of course, there will be 10 more years to treat these trees. We have to make this care together the community. And I show you our Facebook page. So we are communicating here. We show them where we are, what will be in the next step. We try to find out new projects, just like planting in house gardens and so on. So actually, yeah, and the progress is you have an amount for 1 tree to be planted. You can choose from, just like in a web shop, how many saplings you would like to donate, or any other quantity you can make, of course. So you can make an hectare, 1 acres or hectare. There are many grant companies who are donating us, supporting us, and they come to us because they feel that the people, the customers are worrying about this problem. So this is our project. I'm looking for your questions later. That is from all sides.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentations. It is a very good initiatives. I consider it for people who don't have time but want to get involved. I donated for a project like this here in Romania, and I saw that your organization is also present in our countries and maybe in other countries too.
Yes, there is my first organization in Romania as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and we would like to have these organizations in every country in the world, so that would be good, but actually we don't have time for organize this. We are making the Hungarian part.
Okay, thank you. So prepare your questions for Zoltan. And now let's move to the third presentation. Payment for ecosystem services in high ecological value and mature forest managed to free natural evolution by Mr. Stefan Esser from Selvans Associations, Catalonia.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the organization for this great opportunity. I will share my screen. So I think this presentation complements very well the two previous one, because now we are moving to the old quarter of our forests, to those forests that have the largest trees that are managed to free natural evolution. So just as a quick background, Selvans was the name of the Etruscan god, the protector of forests. You can see our logo is based on a real Etruscan inscription. We made some changes so you can read it more easily. And then about the curriculum of Selvans, it's important to understand that it started as a public grant program, but it moved later to a non-profit NGO. It has always been led by Jaume Hidalgo y Colomé, a forest engineer, who put in motion this project in 2005 within a public body, which is the Girona Provincial Council. Our mission is to conserve and valorize a network of high ecological value and mature forests managed to free natural evolution. It's important for you to know that at least here in Catalonia, we don't have any virgin forests, but we have some more mature forests. And we want to create this old quarter of our forests, preserving these major forests. So you have to understand this is our most valuable natural capital and provider of most precious ecosystem services, which is at risk and in urgent need to be safeguarded, at least here in Catalonia. We are aiming at a 5% cover of forests, equivalent to the European average. You can read it through the Forest Europe brochure, which came out a few weeks ago. And this is on the way to a 10% promoted by the European Biodiversity Strategy, which wants to have a 10% of land strictly protected. It's very important to understand this network integrated into a multifunctional forest mosaic, as we've seen to the previous presentation, also by Teresa Valles, which is totally compatible with other management schemes, because free natural evolution is a management scheme. This network includes a sub-network of therapeutical forests, as you will see later, and we are implementing it as a legal and strategic mandate in Catalonia at last. We've been fighting for many, many years, and now the climate change law, the Catalan biodiversity strategy says that this network has to be implemented with an objective of 2030 to have this network. Our logo from our NGO is people taking care of forests, forests taking care of people. There's a yin-yang between forests and people. so you understand a little bit our challenges. Mature forests are scarce and lack a specific legal protection. That's why we have to work mainly on a voluntary scheme. Okay. Then there's not much public conscience about the need and urgency to protect this old quarter, so we have a need for education and awareness raising. Also, as Teresa said, almost 80% of Catalan forests are in private hands, so we want to have a motivating argumentation and scheme that promotes engagement. We don't want to impose anything. We want for forest owners to see it as an opportunity to safeguard for nature part of their estates, while on other parts of their estates they do other kinds of management. We also have a forest law and practice very oriented towards economy of tangibles. That's why we're working with an economic compensation scheme. And here's where it comes with the payment for ecosystem services, because we convert logged forest into conservation forest through payment for ecosystem services, maybe mainly through stumpage acquisition. We pay forest owners for the price, even more, for what they would get for the wood, and in exchange they preserve this forest for normally 15 to 25 years. Okay, as you can understand, we want to protect these 67,000 hectares. We need considerable funding for this payment for ecosystem services, both public and private. We need approximately 4.5 million each year to reach these 2030 targets. We have made some achievements on the way to the 5% of forests for nature and ecosystem services. Our current conservation status is 1.42. We've made a diagnosis of all the forests and different conservation schemes. And we already have located half of this 5% of forests. So we have a diagnosis of 2.54%. More than 1/3 of these preserved forests are thanks to Salvans through its different stages, almost 8,000 hectares, especially through this payment for ecosystem services. There was this first period in the regional council, provincial council, which moved more than 1.5 million to forest owners for this stumpage acquisition. As you see in our work as NGO, we are much humbler budget, but it's tougher, but we are really on it. Then we have engaged more than 300 forest owners that understand this project and want to participate. 140 public and private bodies. We have 13 operational therapeutical networks. Forests, as I told you, this is just a sub-network of this bigger one. We have made 4 university courses for guides. We have a scientific study about forest bathing and fibromyalgia. We have, luckily, we have a growing institutional backup, building on strategic and legal mandate with this network for 2030 as an aim. And last year, we organized the International Congress on Forest and its Potential for Health in 2019. And 2020-21, we've been advancing a lot on the valorization of carbon, biodiversity, health and well-being, and also water and climate resilience. We want to give value to all the services these old quarter of forests give us, so we can compensate forest owners for their preservation, and they can reinvest this payment into their own estates or in the surrounding area to foster sustainable rural development. Just a few pictures from the Congress from 2019, where almost 300 attendants came from the whole world, from the different networks. A very good relationship also with the German land of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, which also are pioneering the subject of forest and health. And as a contribution for today's webinar, I wanted to talk about a little bit about financing, because it's always the thing, how to get the funds. So you have Salvans as a working model of payment for ecosystem services, where we want to channel funds to owners of high ecological and mature forests, mainly from society, public administration, and enterprises. In terms of society, you would have donations or also these forest bathing activities, where part of it gets back to the forest owners of those forests. Then you have the public administration. We are placing a lot of hopes on the new, so Salvans can become a potential tax beneficiary of the CO tax, which is getting in motion this year. So we can channel funds from the Natural Heritage Fund and the Climate Fund to these forest owners. And on the other side, you have Salvans as an operating a voluntary polluter pay scheme by which enterprises can offset their environmental impacts. Mainly, we're talking about sponsorship to offset impacts on biodiversity, climate, health and well-being, and water. Maybe you know about biodiversity. Soil occupation is the first official indicator of impact of our organization on biodiversity by the European Management and Audit Scheme, EMAS. It's an official indicator, and we offer enterprises to help preserve an area of high ecological forests equivalent to the soil they're occupying. Because in these square meters, you've neutralized all biodiversity. So in change, we propose that you preserve the ecosystem which is most biodiverse on terrestrial terms. About climate, we are moving towards a CO2 credit. We want to have a specific credit for these most mature forests, totally compatible with credits about managing younger forests. It's just another way of working it. And we want to give value to resilience. Also about health and well-being, we have this therapeutical network where we operate forest bathing activities, and we would like to implement it within the public health system. And in the future, we would like to move to water offset, but I hope we can make a lot of synergies with Teresa Valle's project presented, because everything is complementary within itself. And just three final thoughts about valuing the positive impact of forestry in the provision of ecosystem services, which is the subject of today's webinar. The first is a fact that forest valuation needs to go beyond tangibles. We have to move towards biodiversity conservation, carbon offsetting, water offsetting, and health and well-being. Please don't forget this last one. It's very important, especially in this post-pandemic phase. So we think there could be an opportunity in this post-COVID scenario for ecological reboot, and also society, enterprises, they could be more conscious to protect nature and its services. As I said, it's not just about preserving nature because it's very beautiful. It's something vital for our future survival and health and well-being. So we are totally linked with it. And finally, especially for governments, that it's maybe could be a good option to combine mandatory schemes in terms of laws that mandate enterprises, for example, to offset their impacts, to combine it with voluntary schemes, or to help set up these voluntary schemes. So you work with a stick and carrot scheme, not stick versus. It's totally complementary, because with this carrot scheme, you give enterprises also the opportunity to be first movers, to innovate, to show excellence. So it's really a motivating scheme. So sometimes something begins voluntary and later on it becomes mandatory by pure inertia. So just everyone to work promote everyone to work mandatory schemes and voluntary schemes. And this will be it. Very glad to accept questions later on. And please don't hesitate to send an email if you want to know more about the project. So thank you very much. And I give back the floor to the organization.
Okay, thank you, Stefan, for your substantial presentation and for the impressive program that you are developing there. Okay, so as you probably noticed, we have already some questions. So I would like to start with our first presenter. Teresa, did you notice the questions for you, or should I read them again from the beginning?
As you wish. As you wish. I can ask. So there was a question saying from whether forest owners will receive their compensation on the long run, and this is based as something similar as Stefan has said in this offsetting kind of instrument, or voluntary. So it's in a voluntary basis. Companies can offset the footprint, water footprint, and also related carbon and biodiversity footprint in this area, or public bodies could also be interested in investing there. So this is in fact, this is the discussion we're going to have on Thursday, and so we will decide which way to start working with first. So then just to make this fund go start. Then there was a and the same question, it was asked how big of a change is implied here in the current practices. So the thing is that now these forests are now managed, so management would be the first challenge, but then we also will require that biodiversity criteria is included is integrated in this forest management. So we've got something called a potential biodiversity index, and that will have to be applied and then will have to be improved after the forest management that is applied. And also we're thinking that this, because the Forest Owners Association will host the fund, it's not going to be just an individual forest owner presenting his forest to this fund or whatever, but it has to be a landscape project management, so that different forest owners together present the forest, their sites to the market. And then, oh yeah, and then see, can the profitability of timber production increase with management? Sure. No, if you start doing this at this early stage, you start managing your forest, so you concentrate growth in the best trees. So in 2 or 3 times, so in the next, maybe in the next treatment or in 2 treatments in the future, you will be able to have some timber production for sure. Whilst if you do nothing, then it's not, profitability is very low. And I think there was another one from Matthias.
I think I asked, yes.
Okay.
About if the government is the owner of the forest, then how these forests are protected or?
Sorry?
I think at the last of the messages there is
okay.
questions for everybody.
Well, the decision to manage a forest relies on the forest owner, being it private or public. No? So within the public bodies, they own a forest, they manage it within the sustainable forest management paradigm. So sustainably, in a way, even if it's mature, they can also, and they integrate also biodiversity conservation criteria, and they can go for segregation strategies, so to leave the mature forest as for natural dynamic evolution and manage the other ones. But the decision is on theirs, always providing that this is within the sustainable management principles.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. I consider that you answered the questions. Now let's move to questions for Zoltán Gájer. First question, you are asked if you could briefly explain your business model.
Yes, actually it's very easy. We calculated the cost of 1 hectare, the planting of the cost of 1 hectare. So this is on this way. On 1 hectare, we can plant about 10,000 saplings. And after 10 years of caring with these saplings, there will be about 1,000 adult trees on 1 hectare. So we calculated the price on the cost of the forest planting on 1 hectare. So this is how we came to this 590 forints, €1.5 is about, which is enough for to making the forestation, and this is enough for 10 years caring of forest management together or without the volunteers. So this is our business model. We don't pay for the landowners. The landowners get their benefits from their land is used again. So maybe they can get some support after 10 years from the EU to have these forests and to later forest management. So this is our model.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we move forward to Stefan. Stefan, you are asked at what level of involving the state authorities in Catalonia in financial aspects concerning the forest conservation and safeguard of forest territory.
Okay. Well, thank you, Shmuel and Matthias, for your questions. About the government involvement, there really has been a shift from 2016-17 on. You have to take into account this network was integrated in 2017 into this climate change law, into the Catalan strategy. So it has been a lot of years that pushing Salvans and also other institutions for this network to be a reality. So we're really glad that the government is really moving ahead. We are in contact and we're in touch, and we got support from the Territory and Sustainable Department, the former Agriculture Department, and also the Health Department. So we have all three now. You know, there's been a restructuring effective today or yesterday, and now there will be a bigger department called Climate Action, Agriculture and Food, which will hope to also continue collaboration. And also you have to take into account the provincial councils. The program started in the provincial council. The Girona Provincial Council is where we've advanced most, but also the Barcelona Council will also collaborated, and hopefully also Tarragona and Lleida. And also municipalities. We have many municipalities that also are forest owners, and we think they should also get this payment for ecosystem service, not on the biggest public forests, but on private and communal forests. That this payment should happen, so they can reinvest it in their own area. And about Matthias' question about the integration of these forests into the management plans, it's totally compatible. This 1.42% I told you that are already in conservation, in some measure of conservation. Some of these percentage is also within the management plan of forest owners. Normally they make a mapping of the state, and some of these areas are already managed to natural evolution. What we wanna find out which of these areas, and we wanna keep them for it. So we would talk to the forest owners so they keep it for this management scheme. Just an example, imagine you're a forest owner and you own 100 hectares of forest, and we are diagnosticate that 10 hectares from this 100, for example, are very high ecological value. Trees haven't been cut for the last 50, 80, 100 years. We have big trees, some are fallen down, they're rotting, the new such a high biodiversity. We would ideally, if we have this big fund, we would pay you for the stumpage acquisition for these 10 hectares, and then you could reinvest this money into the other 90 hectares for whatever you need to do on your estate. So the good thing about this, you would get this payment for ecosystem service for part of your estate while you keep your capital. So it's like getting an interest out of this part of the forest. So it's all a matter of mapping and to understand that it's a multifunctional forest which has many management schemes. And one of these, we advocate that it's the management to natural evolution, which we advocate for this 5%. So it's really not much, but it's so important because it even helps your other areas, even for wood production, because these most mature forests help evade possible pests, or they're also more resilient to climate change, they're more resilient to forest fires. So it's a win-win-win for biodiversity, for forest owners, for everyone, for society with all these ecosystem services. Thank you very much. I hope I've answered the questions.
Thank you. Very, very good and very comprehensive answer. If for the moment there are any other questions for our speakers. Maybe somebody would like to address an oral question. If we don't have any other questions, I propose that we move forward to panel 2, managing farmland areas.
Katalin,
Yes.
Katalin, I think there's a question from Matthias Brummer, if I'm correct.
Yes.
He's holding up his hand. Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't saw that.
No, thank you, Jordi. Thank you as well, Teresa and Stefan, for the presentations, and as well to the others. I just wondered two questions. One is for Teresa and one is for Stefan. Teresa, in your case, why did you go for the private, or why do you think the stakeholders did go for the private fund rather than going for some other form of articulating the payment schemes, or trying it through the CAP payments? Or
I think that was it was not an exclusion. So they did choose the private scheme because well, there were lots of forest owners and also private companies, and they at that moment they wanted to try something that didn't involve public administration in it, so to see whether it could work. No, so not to have they said the burden of a public administration, but this is it doesn't mean that they didn't say they didn't want the public ones, but something that they was not in their hands. And I think they felt they wanted to have something they could control, and they were committed to develop, not that they could impact on that. And all the other schemes depend on other structures that they saw maybe it was too out of control.
And from your perspective, do you think that's the way to go as well in other, if you to extrapolate this, or do you think it should be complementary with?
I think it should be totally complementary. And as I said, we are very happy to know that the water agency has included the forest management as one of the measures in the program of measures for the river basin management plan for the next 5 years. And this is the way for me. This is another way. And also when we're looking for beneficiaries, we're not only looking for private ones, but also for public institutions or local municipalities, maybe that they want to invest in the area. So it has to be a combination. I don't think the payment for ecosystem services it could be the solution. No? It's a very local thing so far, at least, and provides a solution for a very given particular situation, maybe, but I don't think it's totally complementary with public solutions for me.
Thank you. And Stefan, I was wondering if you have this forest, no, the old growth forest within a larger state, no, which could be from one owner, but perhaps as well you have a region in which you have 2 or 3 different high natural value areas, no, but it's not from one single owner, but different ones, no. So my question would be, how are they, in your point of view, enough instruments in the planning in order to integrate the management of those estates, so that that you can say, okay, perhaps it would make sense that here in the middle, no, between those high natural value forests, you do X and Y, but not Z, because it could be harmful for the high natural value forests. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are in contact with many forest owners. Now we are concentrating our action in 6 municipalities, in 6 comarcas. I don't know what it's called. It's with Serralada Transversal. We have a bigger area, and we are in contact with many forest owners where we try to really make connectivity an issue also. So we are talking to several of them, and we're trying to make bigger forest reserve, which could reach 25 hectares, 100 hectares. And once we get this agreement, there are 2 things. Once we can check the management plan already existing, which areas are already managed to free natural evolution. We could include, together with the forest owner, we could include others. And then once we do this payment for ecosystem services, it's very important to review the management plan. So this payment really gets into the management plan, and we secure that these forests are managed to free natural evolution for the next 20, 25 years. 25 years is the regular period we work with, because it's what's considered like a cutting scheme. So if you cut down your forests till 25 years, you couldn't do it again, let's say. It's very also important to know it's not only about creating these forest reserves, but it's also when you look at a forest, it will also be important to leave 5 to 10 bigger trees in between. So it's not just about cutting down everything, because then there comes a lot of brush comes out, and it could be a very dangerous forest for forest fires. So it's very important when you log your forest, we also work for that you leave 5 to 10 per hectare bigger trees, which are very important to biodiversity, for seeds, so for pest work against pests. So it's really multifunctional, and there are many things to do. Always very important, in total agreement with forest ownership, for which this has to be an opportunity. It's not about imposing anything. It's an opportunity that if you have the luck of still having one of these forests, you could make the most out of it, also for society. You have to keep in mind for these trees, if they are 100, 150-year-old trees, if you cut them down, we won't see them again. So we have to secure those still standing. That's the main urgency now for us. And create this more mature forest that someday we have old forests. We don't have old forests in Catalonia. We have most mature forests, but they're still in their infancy, let's say. If you have a forest that's 80 to 100 years old, some of these trees can get to 600, 700, 800 years. So it's really important to map them out and find some of these spaces to leave them for nature to give them all these ecosystem services. And also one point about the term biomimicry is also very interesting. We don't know yet what kind of technology of substances all these forests could provide us. There are species that only appear after decades of wood rotting, for example. New biodiversity is emerging, so it's very important to take some of these areas, some of these forests, and make them like natural laboratories, so nature can show us what it's capable of and what new technologies and substances it can provide to us. So everything is compatible. It's a very important message I wanted to give. Oh, there's a quick question. What happens with the mature forests in national parks? Well, the national park is the only place where it's protected forest, but a natural park doesn't mean mature forests are protected. That's very important for people to understand. In a natural park, at least here in Catalonia, you can cut down all the trees. That's why we want to make this agreement with all the forest owners. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? So I understand that no.